going to inform you today about the difference between grain-fed and grass-fed beef. And this includes the environmental effects, the health effects, and the meat quality that each sector can give you. And so the reason that I want to talk to you guys about this today is because I think it's important to have an informed decision as a consumer and be able to choose what you put into your body, if that's meat or if you're a vegan. So last year I was able to take a course in contemporary issues in agriculture, and that's where I got the idea to talk about this today. And this being a super kind of controversial issue, I kind of wanted to go over this with you guys today and talk about the differences in everything, since you guys are consumers and this relates to you guys buying groceries and whatnot. So I'd like to get started today, but first I want to talk about the life stages of a beef cow from birth to death. And throughout those stages, there's 3 of them. And that would be the first stage, which is the cow-calf stage. And that's from birth to 6 months of age. And then the second stage is going to be the stocker backgrounder stage. And that's 6 months to a year old. And then those 2 stages, the cows are going to be fed on pasture with their moms, drinking their milk and eating the grass, regardless if they're doing grain-finished or grass-finished beef. So the differentiation in both of those sectors, being grain-finished and grass-finished, is going to be the final stage, which is the finishing stage. So in a grain-finished operation, the cows are going to go to a feedlot, which they'll be on until they reach about 1,000 to 1,400 pounds, and then that's 4 to 6 months. And so then on a grass-finished cow, they're going to be on a certified organic pasture, and that's from the USDA certified. They have to be certified through the USDA to be organic, and then they will be finished out on grass, and they'll be about 1,000 to 1,200 pounds. So now I want to go through the environmental effects of grain finished versus grass finished. So as you can see here, this is a poster that I made to kind of help you guys get a feel for the differences in the environmental effects of both sectors. And so in a report that I read from the BASF, which is a chemical company, they put out a report that said grain-fed is about 18 to 70% less of a carbon footprint than that of grass-fed. And that can kind of be shocking to some people, but there are several reasons for that, and I can go into that in a little bit. But as far as the grain-fed, the grain that is mostly used is going to be corn, and the corn is also another distiller's grain, which is used as alcohol from human consumption. So we recycle that and we turn it into distiller's grains, which we feed to all the cows. And so that's distiller's grain. And then also feeding with grain, the cows will have a much higher energy than that of just grass-fed, so they'll finish out a lot quicker, and the cows will go through the operation a lot quicker than that on grass-fed. So something that is good about grass-fed is that the perception from the consumers is that they are roaming free on the grass, and it doesn't give that cramped environment and that muddy look, and it just looks a lot better to the consumer. And I have a report that I also took from a woman. Her name is Sarah Place. She works for the NCBA, and she wrote about the higher forage diet causing more fermentation in the rumen of the cow, which that would be the grass-fed cows. And so with higher fermentation, you're going to have a lot more gas production in the rumen, which is going to be burped out, and that higher fermentation is from the grass-fed cows rather than the grain-fed cows, and that's just based off of what they're eating. And that's the environmental effects. But I also wanted to point out that the cows that are grazing on the grass-fed are using lands that are unfit for crop production, or otherwise the plants are inedible for human consumption. So that's a good thing about the grass-fed. So now I'll move on to the health effects of each side. So I read in an article from Drovers Magazine, which is a beef magazine, that 30 to 70% of the fat from grain-fed is going to be higher in the monounsaturated fat, which is good for the heart, and it's going to be a lot lower in 30 to 70% lower in the grass-fed over the grain-fed. And then the protein's obviously higher in the or in the grain-fed. But the one of the advantages is that the omega-3s, which is also really heart healthy, is very much higher in the grass-fed over the grain-fed. And this data is from the Drovers Magazine, which I mentioned before. And then I also wanted to point out that all three of these fats, there's monounsaturated, saturated, and polyunsaturated fat, all three of them are nearly double in a grain-fed base over a grass-fed base. So if you literally are what you eat when it comes to the cows, because if they're eating grass, you're going to have a lot less fat than that of a grain-fed cow. So now I'm going to move on to the meat quality in a grass-fed versus a grain-fed cow. As you can see, it looks a lot different, but as a consumer, you're probably going to pick the grass-fed over the grain-fed because it looks a lot leaner and it looks like there's more meat there. But I will say that the flex in the grain-fed is what gives it the taste and the flavor, and that's called the marbling, and that's the intermuscular lining, and they get that from the grain, where they won't get that much fat from the grass they're grazing on. And so with the growing population, if you think about it, the grain-fed is a little bit more efficient because by 2050, we're going to have 9 billion people, or 9 million people living in the United States. And with the grain-fed, the cows are moving through the system much quicker. Their life cycle is much quicker than that of a grazing cow on a pasture. So it's much more efficient to feed the growing population. And the difference between the two is when you're going to harvest a cow on grass, he's going to be about 400 pounds lighter than that on a concentrated feed. So those are the difference between those two. And that is all that I have. But I wanted to say that I hope you guys got a lot out of my presentation. And we went over the environmental effects, the health effects, and the difference in meat quality. And I just wanted you guys to have an informed opinion, since you guys are consumers, and I hope you got a lot out of my presentation. So that's it.